By late 1944, American radar-equipped night fighters were intercepting Japanese aircraft in darkness. The technological gap proved impossible for Japan to close. October 12, 1944, 18,000 feet above the Philippine Sea, east of Leyte. The night is supposed to belong to the dark. Cloud layers slide beneath the wings like black water, barely visible in the pale glow of the moon. The engines hum low and steady, their vibration traveling through the fuselage and into the bones of the men inside. For Lieutenant Edward Tex Harper, sitting in the left seat of a Northrop P-61 Black Widow, the darkness outside the canopy feels almost solid, thick enough to hide an entire war. Harper rolls his shoulders, loosening tension that has been building since sunset. His oxygen mask smells faintly of rubber and stale sweat. The cockpit is dim, illuminated only by the soft green glow of instrument dials.
No searchlights.
No tracer fire.
No visible enemy.
Just the quiet, uneasy sense that something is out there, moving unseen. Behind him, in the cramped rear compartment, Lieutenant James O'Donnell leans forward over the radar scope. The screen flickers softly, a circular world of green phosphor lines and sweeping arcs. The antenna dish in the nose of the aircraft rotates silently, sending pulses of energy forward into the darkness. Radio waves that do not care whether the night is clear or clouded, moonlit or pitch black. Contact, O'Donnell says, his voice calm but sharpened by focus. Bearing 085. Range 6 miles. Altitude looks just under us. Harper doesn't answer right away. He grips the control column tighter, eyes still scanning the black void ahead. 6 miles. Invisible. Untouchable by human sight, but the radar sees it as clearly as if the target were painted white against a noon sky. Is it steady? Harper asks.
Stiade, O'Donnell replies.
Speed's consistent. Not a bomber. Too light. A Japanese aircraft. Somewhere out there, a pilot is flying by instinct, by memory, by the belief that night still offers protection. For years, darkness has been a shield, against American fighters, against interception, against sudden death. Japanese air doctrine was built around daylight combat and visual engagement. Night was chaos, something to be endured, not mastered. Harper gently banks left, bringing the Black Widow onto an intercept course he cannot see. The aircraft responds smoothly, its wide wings cutting through the cold air. The P-61 is not elegant, not fast in the way a Mustang is fast, but it carries something no Japanese fighter can match. Eyes that see without light. The radio crackles faintly. Somewhere far below, American ships move in formation, their decks darkened, their guns silent. The invasion of Leyte has begun, and Japanese aircraft are coming, single-engine fighters, twin-engine raiders, reconnaissance planes, hoping to slip through the night and strike the fleet while it sleeps. That strategy worked once. It no longer does. Range 3 miles, O'Donnell says. Target hasn't altered course. Harper exhales slowly. He thinks of the men on the other side of this encounter, though he doesn't know why. Maybe it's the quiet. Maybe it's the knowledge that the fight will be over before the enemy ever knows it has begun. He eases the throttle forward. The Black Widow surges ahead. Hundreds of miles away, on the other side of the same night sky, Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura flies alone. His aircraft, an older model twin-engine bomber converted for night operations, vibrates more than it should. The engines are reliable enough, but the machine feels tired, stretched beyond the war it was designed for. Nakamura peers through the windshield, eyes straining to separate clouds from darkness, darkness from empty sky. There are no stars tonight, just blackness. He flies without radar, without warning systems, without any way to know what might be behind him. Japanese pilots have learned to trust the night. American fighters are fast, deadly, and everywhere during the day. But at night they are blind, or at least they used to be. Nakamura has flown this route before, slipping between patrol zones, counting seconds, trusting altitude and silence. He does not hear the Black Widow behind him. He cannot see it, and he does not know that the night itself has turned against him. Back in the P-61, the radar scope blooms brighter. Visual in 30 seconds, O'Donnell says. Harper nods. His heart rate increases, though his breathing stays controlled. This is not a dogfight. There will be no turning contest, no flashing tracers, no chance for the enemy to react. This is something colder, more deliberate. The nose of the Black Widow dips slightly. The guns are armed. For 20 millimeters, cannons wait in the belly, silent and patient. For the first time in the war, night is no longer neutral ground. It has been claimed. The Japanese aircraft appears suddenly, not as a shape at first, but as a subtle interruption in the darkness. A shadow against shadow. Lieutenant Edward Harper catches it just off the nose, slightly below their altitude. A faint silhouette drifting through the night, unaware. For a brief moment, the enemy plane looks peaceful, almost fragile. Its navigation lights dimmed or extinguished, its pilot trusting the invisibility that has protected him for years. Visual, Harper says quietly. In the rear compartment, Lieutenant O'Donnell's hands hover over the scope, tracking even though sight has finally caught up to signal. The radar no longer leads. It confirms. Distance closes rapidly now. The Black Widow's engines growl as Harper adjusts throttle and trim, lining up the shot with practiced restraint. There is no adrenaline spike like in daylight combat. No sudden violence. This is something else, clinical, almost surgical. Range 400 yards, O'Donnell says. Harper's thumb tightens near the firing switch. He waits. He has learned to wait. Night fighters do not rush. They stalk. The Japanese pilot, Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura, feels nothing unusual. The night air is smooth. The engines maintain rhythm. He glances at his instruments, checks fuel, scans ahead. Somewhere below, the faint suggestion of cloud tops drifts past. He is already planning his turn toward the fleet, calculating approach angles, imagining the black silhouettes of American ships below. He does not know he is already inside another man's gun sight. Harper nudges the aircraft slightly left, then back to center. The Japanese plane is larger now, unmistakable, twin engines, a straight wing. No evasive movement, no reaction. Steady. Harper murmurs, mostly to himself. He squeezes the trigger. The night erupts. For 20 millimeters, cannons thunder from the belly of the P-61. Their recoil shuddering through the fuselage. Tracers streak forward, brilliant orange lines tearing across the darkness. They slam into the Japanese aircraft's left engine and fuselage in a violent, concentrated burst. For Nakamura, the world explodes without warning. The cockpit fills with light and sound. Metal tearing, fuel igniting, alarms screaming. The aircraft lurches violently to the side as the left engine disintegrates in flame. Controls go slack, then stiffen as hydraulic pressure fails. What? He begins, but the word never finishes. There is no enemy in front of him. No fighter crossing his nose. No muzzle flashes to chase. Only sudden destruction from nowhere. He instinctively pulls back on the yoke, fighting a machine that no longer obeys. Fire crawls along the wing route, licking toward the fuselage. Smoke pours into the cockpit, thick and choking. His hands move automatically, mixture cut, prop feathered, but the damage is catastrophic. The night has betrayed him. Behind him, Harper releases the trigger and pulls up gently, sliding past the burning wreckage. He watches as the Japanese aircraft begins a slow, awful descent, trailing fire like a comet falling back to Earth. No parachute appears. Splash in about 20 seconds. O'Donnell says quietly, eyes still on the scope. Harper nods once. He does not cheer. He does not speak. The kill feels different at night. More distant. More final. They bank away, already searching for the next contact. By the end of October 1944, encounters like this are no longer rare. Japanese pilots begin reporting impossible attacks. Fighters that appear without warning, strike with precision, and vanish back into darkness. Survivors describe gunfire from nowhere, aircraft destroyed before evasive action is possible, formations shattered without ever seeing the enemy. At Japanese airfields in the Philippines and Formosa, commanders gather reports that make no sense. Pilots insist they were flying correctly, at safe altitudes under full darkness. There were no searchlights,
No flares. No visible interceptes.
yet aircraft keep failing to return. In briefings, officers draw diagrams on chalkboards, pointing at patrol routes, moon phases, cloud cover. None of it explains the losses. The Americans are supposed to be blind at night. Everyone knows this, or knew it, but something has changed. Captured wreckage begins to offer clues. Fragments of unfamiliar equipment recovered from crashed American aircraft. Odd antenna arrays, strange wiring, black boxes sealed against vibration. Intelligence officers photograph them, sketch them, argue over their purpose. Radar. The word spreads slowly, reluctantly. The Americans are flying fighters with radar on board. Not ground-controlled interception alone, not searchlights guiding fighters in, but aircraft that can see independently, deep into the night. For Japanese pilots raised on visual skill and instinct, the revelation is staggering. The night is no longer empty. It is crowded with invisible eyes. November 1944. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. Rain drips from the corrugated metal roof of the operations hut, tapping out a steady rhythm that mixes with the distant rumble of engines on the flight line. Inside, Captain Richard Lawson stands over a large wooden table, hands braced on a map of the Western Pacific. His flight jacket hangs open, stained with oil and sweat. His eyes are fixed not on islands or shipping lanes, but on something new, something that has transformed the night. A radar scope. It sits on a crate beside him, humming quietly, its phosphor screen glowing in the dim light. The sweeping line rotates again and again, painting a ghostly circle that represents miles of invisible sky. This thing, Lawson says, almost to himself, is the difference between guessing and hunting. Around him, young pilots listen in silence. Some of them are veterans of daylight combat, men who have chased Japanese Zeros across blue skies and through towering cumulus clouds. Others are new, trained specifically for night operations, taught to trust a machine more than their eyes. The machine is the SCR-720 radar set, mounted in the nose of the Northrop P-61 Black Widow. It is heavy, complex, and temperamental. It requires a trained operator, constant calibration, and a crew that trusts each other completely. But when it works, it turns darkness into a battlefield as visible as noon. Lawson taps the scope with a finger. Before this, he says, you chased shadows. Now you chase blips. And blips don't lie. The idea that aircraft could detect other aircraft in total darkness once belonged to science fiction. Radar had existed before the war, but it was large, ground-based, and crude. Britain's chain home system helped win the Battle of Britain in 1940, but it guided fighters from the ground. Pilots still had to visually locate their targets. By 1943, American engineers had pushed the technology into the air itself. The British had pioneered airborne interception radar, but the Americans refined it, miniaturized it, and mass-produced it. The result was a generation of night fighters that did not need searchlights, moonlight, or luck. They needed only electrons and trained operators. The P-61 Black Widow is the most famous of these machines. With twin engines, a bulky fuselage, and a three-man crew, it is built for one purpose: to find and kill aircraft in the dark. Its radar dish rotates in the nose, sending out pulses that bounce off metal objects in the sky and return as signals. The operator interprets these signals, guiding the pilot toward an invisible enemy. In training, pilots learn to fly blind. They practice intercepts using only spoken directions, Turn left 5 degrees. Target bearing 270. Range 4 miles.
Closing fast.
It is a new language of war, spoken in vectors and ranges instead of clouds and silhouettes. Japanese aviation has nothing like this. Their industry struggles to produce even basic fighter designs by late 1944. Radar research exists, but it is fragmented, underfunded, and focused primarily on ground-based early warning systems. Airborne radar is rare, experimental, and unavailable to frontline units. Most Japanese pilots still navigate by compass, stopwatch, and stars. American pilots navigate by invisible pulses. In Tokyo, reports from the front pile up on the desks of exhausted intelligence officers. They come from the Philippines, from Formosa, from the Marianas. Night raids intercepted. Reconnaissance aircraft destroyed. Bombers shot down without warning. The pattern is undeniable. The Americans are no longer afraid of the night. They own it. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Tanaka, an intelligence officer in the Imperial Japanese Navy, reads through a stack of combat reports late into the night. Cigarette smoke hangs thick in the room. He removes his glasses, rubbing his eyes, then replaces them. One pilot describes being attacked from behind with no warning, no searchlights, no visible fighters. Another describes tracers appearing from darkness, hitting his aircraft before he saw anything at all. A third insists he was tracked for minutes before being shot down, though he never saw his attacker. Tanaka underlines a phrase in one report: "The enemy sees us in the dark." He leans back, staring at the ceiling. If this is true, it changes everything. Japanese doctrine assumes that night is safety. Bombers and reconnaissance planes operate under the assumption that American fighters are limited by human vision. Now that assumption is collapsing. Tanaka drafts a memorandum to his superiors, warning that American airborne radar-equipped fighters represent a technological gap Japan cannot easily close. He chooses his words carefully, knowing how unwelcome such admissions can be. He ends with a single sentence: "The enemy has turned darkness into daylight." Back in the Pacific, Captain Lawson watches another Black Widow taxi onto the runway, its navigation lights blinking faintly through the rain. The crew climbs aboard. The radar operator settles into his seat, adjusting headphones and calibrating the scope. The pilot runs through his checklist, hands moving by muscle memory. The engines roar to life, drowning out the rain. Lawson knows what this aircraft represents. It is not just a fighter. It is a symbol of industrial and scientific superiority. Each radar unit requires precision manufacturing, skilled technicians, rare materials, and a massive support infrastructure. Each trained operator requires months of instruction. Each mission requires coordination between ground control, pilots, and engineers. Japan cannot replicate this system in time. The war is not just being fought with bullets and bombs anymore. It is being fought with oscilloscopes, vacuum tubes, and factories that never sleep. The Black Widow lifts off, disappearing into the rain and darkness. Somewhere out there, Japanese pilots still believe the night will protect them. They are about to learn how wrong they are. December 3, 1944. Clark Field, Luzon. The air smells of damp earth, oil, and burned metal. What remains of the airfield lies scattered in uneven lines. Revetments smashed, hangars torn open, aircraft pulled apart like toys. In a makeshift briefing room, illuminated by lantern light, Japanese pilots sit in silence. Lieutenant Kenji Sato stares at the floor, his flight helmet resting in his lap. His hands tremble slightly, though he tries to hide it. Around him, men speak in low voices, trading rumors, fragments of reports, half-understood explanations. "They don't use searchlights anymore," someone says. "They don't need the moon," another replies. "They come from behind. Always behind." Sato looks up. You never see them, he says quietly. Not until you are already hit. No one argues. The room holds men trained to fight with skill, precision, and courage. Many of them are veterans of China, of the early Pacific victories. They have fought American aircraft before. They know how to fight aircraft they can see. But this enemy does not appear. It arrives as gunfire, as fire in the cockpit, as a sudden tearing of metal. Japanese night flying doctrine is unraveling in real time. Orders arrive from higher command. Change altitudes, fly lower, fly higher, vary routes, cut engines briefly, hug cloud layers. None of it works. Radar does not care about clever flying. It does not care about camouflage paint or extinguished lights. It sees mass and motion. Lieutenant Sato flew a reconnaissance mission the night before. He remembers the moment clearly. He was over the coast, engines steady, watching the faint reflection of moonlight on water far below. Then his aircraft shuddered. A burst of cannon fire tore through the fuselage. The cockpit filled with sparks and smoke. He never saw the attacker. He escaped only because the American pilot overshot, misjudging closure speed in the dark. Sato limped home with one engine failing, his aircraft riddled with holes. When he landed, ground crews stared at the damage in disbelief. There were no searchlight burns, no evidence of flak, only precision. Across the field, in a different kind of briefing room, American pilots review the same night from a different perspective. Major William Red Harris stands before a chalkboard, drawing a simple circle. He marks a dot near the edge. That's him, he says. Came in from the north, low and slow. Thought he was invisible. Harris taps the chalk against the board. He wasn't. The pilots laugh softly. Not from cruelty but from relief. Night fighting is exhausting. It requires absolute trust in instruments and crew. Every successful intercept feels like cheating death. Harris continues. Radar picked him up at 8 miles. Operator walked me in. He never maneuvered. Never knew we were there. A young lieutenant raises a hand. Sir, what if they start using radar too? Harris pauses, then smiles thinly. They won't, he says. Not like this. Not in time. The room grows quiet. Everyone knows what he means. By late 1944, American night fighting is not an experiment. It is a system. Ground-based early warning radar detects incoming aircraft. Controllers vector night fighters toward targets. Airborne radar takes over for the final intercept. Pilots fire without ever relying on eyesight. It is layered, redundant, and brutally effective. Japan has pieces of this system, but never all of them, never integrated, never supported by the industrial base required to sustain it. In the skies above the Philippines, Formosa, and Okinawa, Japanese losses mount. Aircraft that once slipped through now vanish without explanation. Crews begin refusing night missions when possible. Some claim illness. Others volunteer for daylight operations instead, preferring visible danger to unseen death. Morale erodes. Japanese commanders attempt countermeasures. Some aircraft carry crude radar warning devices. Others fly in loose formations, hoping one plane might spot the attacker. A few experiment with night fighters of their own, but without reliable radar or trained operators, results are minimal. American night fighters adapt faster. They adjust tactics. They learn Japanese habits. They exploit predictability. Radar operators memorize closure rates and firing distances. Pilots develop an instinct for invisible geometry, turning based on voices rather than vision. The night becomes familiar, predictable, safe for one side. Lieutenant Edward Harper, now with dozens of night sorties behind him, feels the difference in his body. The fear is still there, but it is controlled. He trusts O'Donnell's voice more than his own eyes. When the radar speaks, he listens. When it tells him to turn, he turns. When it says fire, he fires. On one mission, he intercepts 2 Japanese aircraft flying in loose formation. He destroys the first. The second breaks away wildly, diving into cloud, engines screaming. The radar never loses him. Harper follows calmly, adjusting altitude, watching the scope brighten as range collapses. He fires once. The second aircraft disappears in flame. 2 kills. Neither pilot ever saw him. When he lands, ground crews count shell casings and mark silhouettes beneath the cockpit. Another small chalk symbol joins the others. Harper does not feel triumphant. He feels final. Somewhere, Lieutenant Kenji Sato writes a letter home. He chooses his words carefully. He does not mention radar. He does not mention fear. He writes about duty, about honor, about flying in service of the Emperor. But he ends with a sentence he cannot stop himself from writing. The night is no longer empty. January 18, 1945. Imperial Japanese Army Air Service Headquarters, Tokyo. Snow gathers silently along the edges of the city, muffling sound and softening the scars left by earlier raids. Inside a dimly heated conference room, senior officers sit hunched over a long table, coats still on, breath faintly visible in the cold air. Blueprints and technical diagrams lie scattered between teacups and ashtrays. At the head of the table, Colonel Masao Kuroda clears his throat. "We are not blind," he says carefully, "but we are being hunted as if we are." No one contradicts him. For months now, reports have confirmed the same reality. American aircraft are intercepting Japanese planes at night with precision that borders on the supernatural. Attempts to explain the phenomenon away as luck, exaggeration, pilot error have failed. Too many aircraft have vanished. Too many pilots have described the same impossible sequence. Sudden gunfire, no warning, no visible enemy. The conclusion is unavoidable. Radar. A junior officer gestures toward the diagrams. "We have airborne radar projects," he says. "Experimental units. The Germans have had some success." Kuroda cuts him off with a raised hand. "The Germans had time," he says, "and materials, and factories not under constant attack." The room falls quiet again. Japan's industrial situation by 1945 is dire. Aluminum shortages cripple aircraft production. Fuel is rationed so severely that pilots receive only minimal training hours. Skilled engineers are pulled from research projects to keep basic manufacturing alive. Even if advanced airborne radar could be designed, producing it in sufficient numbers, and training crews to use it effectively, would take years Japan no longer has. And the Americans are not standing still. In the Pacific, radar technology continues to evolve even as the war enters its final phase. Newer radar sets become more reliable, less prone to failure. Night fighter crews refine procedures. Communication between radar operators and pilots becomes almost instinctive. A shared rhythm develops, a shared language of numbers and tones. Target left 10, down 200. You've got him. These words guide aircraft through blackness with deadly certainty. Night fighters no longer fly reactively. They patrol aggressively, sweeping the skies around invasion fleets, airfields, and supply routes. Japanese aircraft attempting reconnaissance or harassment missions are intercepted far from their targets. The psychological effect is profound. Japanese pilots begin to believe the Americans can see everything. Some report feeling watched even before contact, an irrational sensation that something is tracking them. Others describe hearing American engines behind them even when nothing is visible. Fear erodes confidence. Confidence erodes effectiveness. The night, once a sanctuary, becomes hostile territory. Lieutenant Kenji Sato returns to the air one final time. February 9th, 1945. Over the East China Sea. His mission is routine on paper. Coastal patrol, minimal exposure, strict radio silence. The aircraft feels lighter now, less fuel, fewer weapons, fewer chances. He scans the darkness constantly, neck aching from tension. Every shadow looks like an attacker. Every flicker of light feels like a tracer. He reminds himself to breathe. Then the radio crackles with static. Not a voice, just interference. His heart rate spikes. He adjusts course slightly, hoping to break any unseen pursuit. He flies lower, skimming cloud tops. He counts seconds. He listens. Nothing. For a moment he dares to hope. Then his aircraft jolts violently. The cockpit fills with sparks as cannon rounds tear through the fuselage. Instruments shatter. The left engine erupts in flame. Sato yanks at the controls, but the aircraft is already lost. He never sees his attacker. Above him, a P-61 Black Widow slides past, unseen, its crew already searching for the next target. Radar operators mark the contact as terminated. Another blip gone. In American briefings, these intercepts are discussed without ceremony. Radar contact at 7 miles. Intercepted at 2. Destroyed. The language is clinical, efficient, almost detached, but beneath it lies an understanding that something irreversible has happened. This is not just a tactical advantage. It is a technological chasm. Japan cannot close it. Not in 1945. Not ever within the timeline of the war. As American forces prepare for the invasion of Okinawa, night fighters take on an even greater role. Kamikaze attacks loom. The threat is no longer conventional air combat but desperate, suicidal strikes under cover of darkness. Radar-equipped fighters form the first line of defense. They find incoming aircraft before they reach the fleet. They thin the waves. They buy precious minutes. Sometimes they stop attacks entirely. For the first time, an enemy that once embraced night now fears it. The balance has shifted completely. March 25, 1945. West of Okinawa. The sea below is calm, deceptively so. A black mirror broken only by the faint wakes of hundreds of Allied ships. From above, the invasion fleet looks unreal. An armada held together by dim running lights and the dull glow of cigarettes on open decks. Every man aboard knows what is coming. Okinawa will not be like the islands before it. Above the fleet, the night is alive. Lieutenant Edward Harper sits motionless in the cockpit of his Black Widow, orbiting at altitude. His headset crackles constantly now. Voices overlapping, vectors being updated, radar contacts appearing and disappearing across the scope behind him. This is no longer a hunt for lone intruders. This is a screen, a shield. Multiple contacts, bearing 140, O'Donnell says. Range 15 miles. Altitude low. They're coming in fast. Harper swallows once. Kamikazes. The word is never spoken in the cockpit, but both men know exactly what it means. Japanese aircraft are no longer trying to escape. They are trying to reach the fleet at any cost. Harper banks left, engines pushing harder now. Below him, other night fighters maneuver, invisible to one another but coordinated by radio and radar. It is a web layers of detection, interception, and destruction, all operating in total darkness. The first contact appears visually as a dim shape, wings barely visible against the sea. The Japanese pilot is flying straight and level, committed. No evasive movement,
No hesitation.
He's not turning, O'Donnell says. Harper doesn't expect him to. He fires once. The aircraft disintegrates in a flash of flame, fragments scattering downward. There is no time to watch. Another contact is already emerging on the scope. Next target, 12 o'clock low. The night explodes again. On the Japanese side, the experience is terrifying in its own way. Sub-Lieutenant Hiroshi Aoyama grips the controls of his aircraft, sweat running down his spine despite the cold. His mission is simple. Fly low, fly straight, do not turn back, do not hesitate. He has been told the Americans will not see him at night. That radar is unreliable at low altitude. That speed and surprise will carry him through. He believes it because he must. Then his radio erupts with static. Not orders, not encouragement, just noise. Moments later, the aircraft ahead of him vanishes in a sudden explosion, lighting the sea below like daylight for a heartbeat. Aoyama flinches, instinctively pulling back on the controls, then forces himself steady. Another flash, another aircraft gone. He understands then, with absolute clarity, that the night is no longer protection. It is a killing ground. Aoyama never reaches the fleet. By April 1945, the pattern is unmistakable. Night fighter radar does not stop kamikaze attacks entirely, but it reduces their effectiveness dramatically. Many aircraft are intercepted miles from their targets. Others are disrupted, forced to scatter or descend prematurely. Precious minutes are gained, allowing shipboard radar and anti-aircraft guns to prepare. For the Japanese, these losses are catastrophic. Aircraft, pilots, and fuel are expended without achieving results. Missions that were meant to bypass American defenses are being destroyed before they even begin. Darkness, once an ally, has become irrelevant. In Tokyo, the reality is impossible to ignore. Intelligence summaries describe a sky that no longer hides anything. American radar coverage extends outward from fleets and airfields like invisible nets. Pilots report being intercepted without warning, even at low altitude, even in poor weather. The technological disparity is complete. There will be no countermeasure.
No Sadenbraxru.
No miracle device that restores the night. Japan is fighting a war in which the enemy sees more, knows more, and reacts faster at any hour. After one particularly brutal night over Okinawa, Harper lands at his base exhausted beyond words. Ground crews swarm the aircraft, counting shell casings, checking for damage. O'Donnell removes his headset slowly, rubbing his temples. "How many tonight?" Harper asks quietly. "3 confirmed," O'Donnell replies. "2 probables." Harper nods. He feels nothing like victory, only weight. He knows that every blip on the radar was a man. Cockpit. A moment of realization too late. Radar has turned combat into something impersonal, distant, unavoidable. And yet, it has saved thousands of lives below. The men on the ships sleep more safely because of it. As dawn approaches, the night fighters peel away, replaced by daylight patrols. The sky shifts from black to gray to blue, but something fundamental has changed. The war no longer pauses when the sun goes down. The darkness no longer belongs to anyone. May 14, 1945. An airstrip outside Atsugi, Japan. The engines are quieter now. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto notices it as soon as he steps onto the tarmac. Where there were once rows of aircraft warming up for night missions, there are gaps. Empty revetments. Oil-stained concrete with nothing parked on it. The ground crews move slowly, deliberately, as if hurrying might remind them of what they no longer have. Yamamoto adjusts his flight jacket and looks toward the horizon. The sun is setting, bleeding red into the clouds. Night is coming, and with it, fear. Night briefings used to be calm affairs. Routes, altitudes, fuel calculations. Now they are exercises in omission. Missions are shorter. Objectives are vague. Expectations are unspoken. Everyone knows what happens after dark. In the briefing hut, an officer clears his throat and speaks without looking up. American night fighters are active along all coastal approaches. Maintain radio silence. Avoid predictable headings. No one asks how. No one asks why. They already know. Yamamoto flew daylight missions early in the war, back when the sky felt open and forgiving. Now, the sun has become safer than the dark. At least in daylight, you can see what kills you. At night, death arrives as numbers on a screen somewhere else. In the Pacific, American radar operators watch blips appear and vanish as the war grinds toward its end. By mid-1945, the process is routine. A contact appears at 20 miles. Course is plotted. Intercept is assigned. The fighter moves. The blip disappears. Sometimes there is debris. Sometimes there is nothing at all. Lieutenant James O'Donnell has begun to dream in radar sweeps. Bright lines rotating endlessly, targets blooming and fading. He wakes up some nights reaching for headphones that are not there. During one mission, as they orbit near the Japanese coast, he watches the scope carefully. No contacts. No movement. For the first time in months, the sky is empty. Quiet night, he says. Harper nods but does not relax. Silence has become suspicious. They continue their patrol anyway. Radar does not sleep. It waits. The Japanese aviation community is breaking under the strain. Fuel shortages ground aircraft. Training hours vanish. New pilots are rushed through abbreviated programs, never taught night flying at all. Experienced pilots are lost faster than they can be replaced. Radar research programs are quietly shelved. Their engineers reassigned to keep factories operating under constant bombing. The night fighter war is already decided. Even before the first atomic bomb falls, the sky above Japan has become transparent. American B-29s fly at night with impunity. Radar-guided intercepts protect bomber streams and invasion fleets alike. Japanese attempts to respond are scattered, desperate, ineffective. The technological gap has become absolute. August 6, 1945. Before dawn. Over the Pacific. An American night fighter patrol circles idly, its radar painting an empty sky. The radio is quiet. No vectors. No alerts. Below, the world is about to change in ways no one fully understands. But for the men in the cockpit, one truth is already clear. The future of war will not be decided by eyesight alone. It will be decided by who can see without looking. After the surrender, pilots return home carrying memories they struggle to explain. Japanese aviators speak of fear without enemies, of aircraft destroyed by invisible forces. American night fighter crews speak of blips and vectors, of kills made without faces, of nights that felt endless. Radar has reshaped combat. It has ended the age when darkness could be trusted. Years later, engineers will look back on those nights over the Pacific and recognize them for what they were. The moment when the sky stopped being human. The moment when machines learned to see.